Call the meeting to order.
Sean Lucas, Justin Orff,
Here.
Jared Giddens,
Here.
Aaron Peterson,
Here.
Darlene Graham. Here. Amy Hookstrat.
Here.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Russell isn't here tonight, but he added the Pledge of Allegiance to the chamber luncheon as well, which I thought was a very nice addition. So,
I did say no. You better love it.
and we'll move on to our proclamation. Did you take my proclamation? All right. Whereas October is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and whereas breast cancer is the most common cancer in women in the world, and with an estimated more than 2 million new cases recorded in 2020, and whereas in 2021, more than 281,000 new cases are expected to be diagnosed in women and more than 2,600 cases in men in the U.S., and whereas in 2021, more than 44,000 women and men in the United States are expected to die from breast cancer, and whereas improvements in early detection and treatment led to a 41% decline in breast cancer deaths in the U.S. between 1989 and 2018, and whereas in 2020, there were more than 7 million people living with breast cancer in the world, and there are more than 3.8 million breast cancer survivors in the U.S. And whereas increased breast cancer screening increases early detection, reduces death, increases life expectancy, and decreases late-stage cancer diagnosis, and whereas Breast Cancer Awareness Month serves as an opportunity to increase awareness of this disease, now therefore I, Brian Steele, Mayor for the City of Nixa, do hereby proclaim the month of October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
I would just like to say on behalf of others, my wife is one of the 3.8 million survivors of breast cancer, and just like to say thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
My mom was a survivor too.
All right, we'll move on to our visitor section. Visitors tonight, Cindy.
First one is Jeff Belcher.
I'm Jeff Belcher, Nixon, Missouri, also known as the usual speakers, apparently. I've seen a lot of signs popping up around town, Mr. Mayor. You nervous? Are you acknowledging me? Or are you playing on your phone? A little eye contact would be nice. I'll wait. Can I get my timer reset until we're all in attendance?
As we discussed, your time waiting for us is part of your time. If we have a question for you, that is part of our time. So
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Belcher.
Okay, so we're going to play that way then, okay. I guess you've been in office 10 years, give or take. I would assume somebody of your stature and length of service would understand how the process works with city council. However, your city's webpage is stating that if we win this vote and we vote yes as a city to have you recalled, that would cause the city council to have to select someone to serve as mayor temporarily. Is that false, or is that true?
I'm not sure.
I believe we've already did that. Did we not have a mayor pro tem election when the new council members were sworn in? I believe Mr. Giddens was the recipient of that nomination. I don't know why the city would want to advertise it as such that it's going to be a burden and another big drawn-out ordeal that now council has to pick somebody else. That's already been done.
I believe there'll have to be another election in April.
Yes, it states that as well, but it also states the falseness about, we're going to have to pick somebody else to serve in the meantime, which is a blatant lie. I would expect someone with 10 years of experience would know that. And my next thing is I've scoured and scoured this home charter rule that we're supposed to abide by, you as a council and you as a mayor. I see emergency powers mentioned under city council's responsibilities, and basically 3.1 of the city council's mentioning in the charter basically states that you all have the power. You all make the decisions. So I would like to ask each of you that were present on the council at time. What was this process to just throw your hands up in the air and delegate all your duties and responsibility as elected councilman to the mayor, who's not supposed to have these kind of powers?
As you well know, Mr. Belcher, that is false. Under Section 2.2 of the Home Rule Charter, one of the mayor's powers is to do all things enacted via the Home Rule Charter, ordinance, or state law. State law has an extensive section on state of emergencies. The Home Rule Charter does not mention state of emergencies at all.
I believe
It does
I do
mention
believe it
emergency
does.
ordinances, but that is not what that was.
And that's
That
how
was
you
a-
achieve those powers, was through an emergency ordinance, correct? When our council decided to delegate their
It was
duties
an
to you?
ordinance declaring a state of emergency, Mr. Belcher, which are two different things.
A state emergency, which was declared by the governor?
It was declared by the governor and this council as well.
Okay, well, here where I'm reading, says 3.1 of the council. Except as this charter provides otherwise, all powers of the city shall be vested in the council. That's the council. The council shall provide for the exercise of these powers and for the performance of all duties and obligations imposed on the city by law.
Correct.
Now, would that state order be a law?
Would assume so.
So then why does that not fall under the jurisdiction of the council? When it's specifically spelled out, that's their responsibility.
Council also has the ability to make ordinances. One of those ordinances under state law is to declare a state of emergency. Under state of emergency, which has been declared in Christian County 9 times over the last 10 years. That's what that's what Phil Amtower said earlier today at our chamber luncheon, that a state of emergency has been declared in Christian County 9 separate times over his tenure. So that is something that is commonly done by mayors, by county officials, by state officials, by the President of the United States, where a state of emergency is declared, some executive authority is then given to the...
Okay, and all those 9 other times, how many times did the council vote to relinquish all their power and decision-making abilities and responsibilities to you in those 9 previous times?
I believe that is the first state of emergency ever been declared
That was
by
the
Nixon.
first. Okay, ironic. All it would have taken was a special meeting to hold a vote, to make it your responsibility. They've made you the fall guy, Mr. Mayor. So maybe you can thank them if this doesn't go well.
Sometimes it's the leader's obligation to lead.
I get
Thank
it.
you, Mr.
I get it.
Belcher.
I get it.
Thank you,
And
Mr. Belcher.
I do notice also in the minutes
Thank you,
from
Mr.
the
Belcher.
meetings,
Your time has expired. Thank you, Mr. Belcher. Thank you, Mr. Belcher.
I was waiting for you.
Thank you, Mr. Belcher.
Oh, are we going to point the wrong?
Well, if you're not going to
Okay, I'll do that.
abide by the rules, Mr. Belcher,
Okay.
move along.
Mayor, if you would like for me to address the section of the Home Rule Charter that does cover the vacancy, I'd be happy to do that.
Sure, that'd be great, Jimmy.
Under the Home Rule Charter, Section 4.6, subsection C, at the end, it says, "Council shall, by majority vote of the entire council, appoint someone to serve as mayor if the general election is over 60 days from the date of vacancy."
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. So the Home Rule Charter does state that the council shall elect someone if it's more than 60 days.
Well, then, again, why wouldn't we vote on in April when the new council members were sworn?
Because the Home Rule Charter, well, the mayor pro tem has many duties, not just to take over for the mayor if the mayor is recalled. That is not the essential purpose of the mayor pro tem. But what is the essential purpose of the mayor pro tem, Mr. Giddens?
Depends on the day.
Fills in when the mayor is unavailable. But the Home Rule Charter specifically outlines what should happen in the case that the mayor is removed from office, that for any reason, if they move out of town or anything else, the Home Rule Charter spells those rules out.
So would there be another vote then?
All right, who's next, Cindy?
Next up is Jan Mann. Okay. Pat Briggs? Do you
Sounds
want to skip that? Jan, you don't want to speak any longer? Okay. Pat Briggs can speak then. we'll pass you, we'll put you below Pat. Deal? Thank you.
Mayor Steele, members of the council. My name is Pat Briggs. I live at 309 North Old Wilderness Road. I also have Jan Mann and Amy Barnett here with me also, in case I forget to cover something. We're here regarding the sidewalk, proposed sidewalk project on North Old Wilderness from Highway 14 to Wasson Drive. I have provided earlier a list of the homeowners that have signed their objection to such. We feel like I actually obtained the majority of the homeowners on our street. I was unable to talk to a few remaining homeowners. One is a rental property. The resident was not comfortable in providing the homeowner's address for me, so I was unable to contact him. Another resident stated that he really didn't care one way or the other, so he refused or didn't want to sign my proposal that I had, the rest of them was signing. I was totally unable to contact the other two. No one was home or didn't come to the door. Still, we obtained the majority of the votes. I understand that the ones that I was not able to contact had visited with their neighbors and was really not supportive of the project itself. There's various reasons that we really prefer not to have the project. Some of it being some of the objections. None of the businesses face our street, so you would still not be gaining entrance to the business because they all face the other direction. So there would be no access to the entrance just by building a sidewalk on our street. We really don't want concrete as part of our front yard, relinquishing the little bit of green space that we have. It would promote more foot traffic, we're afraid. Also, in that instance, we think it would promote vandalism if you have more foot traffic throughout the day and especially in the evening. There's no children on our street. I know that's subject to change at any time. There's no schools in our neighborhood. So we really, as homeowners there, don't feel like that your expenditure meets the return when the residents really does not appreciate or want that construction going on. I, for one, my husband is a Vietnam veteran, and any noises or construction or change like that at any time could trigger a reaction on his part, being detrimental to his well-being. So we would certainly like for the mayor and the council to revisit that proposal at this point, and you would certainly make a lot of homeowners very happy if we didn't have to relinquish our green space for concrete in our front yard. I appreciate your time.
Any
Thank you for your
questions?
consideration.
Questions for Ms. Briggs?
So,
Thank you. Thank you. Pat.
Thank you.
Jan Mann, would you like to speak?
Good evening. I'm Jan Mann. I live at 205 North Old Wilderness Road, and I'm here in support of Pat and our neighborhood because we want to keep it residential. We have business across the street from us, but as Pat said, it's the back of the businesses, and we'd like to try to keep our area as residential as possible. The other problem that I have seen with four of the homes on our street are lots of cars. They have, one of them is the rental. I don't know how many people are living there, but there's like 6 cars. And some of the driveways are not very long. And so when they're parking, they're only this far from the street. And when you put a sidewalk there, I know that you're not supposed to be parking over a sidewalk and blocking it. And so that's going to cause a hardship for those at least 4 families that I know of, or 4 properties. So that's another issue that we've been concerned about. The other thing is, and I was told the city would replant, but some of the properties are going to lose shrubbery and tree, maybe a tree, some bushes. And even though they might be replaced, it will take it's an older neighborhood. My home was built in '58, so you can tell it's an older neighborhood. It'll take a long time for those to return to the place where they are now. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Amy Barnett? Okay. Rich Lewis? Okay. Ron Sanders?
My name's Ron Sanders. I live at 976 Glen Oaks Drive. Whether you guys realize it or not, I never wanted to be here. I never wanted to come here and get involved in all of this. As I've come through the time of doing everything that I've done so far, I can tell you that people don't want to be a part of this. People don't want to rally. People don't want to protest. People don't want to, have to get involved to this level. Okay? They elected y'all to take care of all of this stuff. And they expect a certain level of ethical responsibility with that, and knowing your job and everything, and knowing what you're doing. Okay? Now, why are we here? I would contend that a Republican form of government is one of the key principles to how we've come so far. That means that the legislatures legislate, the executive branch executes, okay? And the judicial branch, of course, judges, right? They do all of that kind of stuff. But what y'all did was, y'all wrote an ordinance, 2111, that gave legislative power to the executive branch. Whether you realize it or not, under the emergency powers. And I do that kind of sarcastically because I've looked through the home charter, and the word emergency powers, those 2 words together, don't exist anywhere in the home charter. Some of y'all were there when it was written, and y'all read through it, and y'all know that. There's also a state law that specifies what a mayor's duty is during an emergency. Did y'all know that? I don't know if y'all knew that or not, but it's very specific, and it has nothing to do with making rules and making legislation. Okay? The home charter, what Mr. Belcher was talking about, section 3.11, specifically gives the power of legislation to the city council. Nowhere in there does it say that the city council can delegate that power to anybody else. But that's what you did. And that was wrong. That's why we are here. And Mr. Mayor, I would contend that you being the executive should have stopped it in its tracks and should have encouraged the city council to reconsider and do it the right way. As an executive, knowing your oath, knowing your job for how many years now, and understanding what a Republican form of government is, I'm pretty sure that you've read the Constitution. I'm pretty sure that you understand these basic principles. But you sat down and you wrote an ordinance You called it a mask mandate, but you wrote an ordinance. Every single part of that mask mandate has all of the parts of an ordinance. And that's why we're here. Okay? Ordinance 2111 existed before the July vote, so why did we vote in July for a mask mandate? Why did we go through all that trouble if you already had that power? Because maybe we didn't recognize that power at the time until later on. I'm not going to speculate and I'm not going to go through a bunch of stuff, but I can tell you that some of the things that were done here, okay, indicate how y'all want to operate. Moving the citizens' voice to the end of the city council meeting was wrong. That indicates that y'all don't want to hear from us citizens. That tells us, shut up and go away. And that's the message that everybody heard loud and clear. It goes right along with this 5-minute timer. It's great to have a guidance and say, hey guys, let's have some consideration and let's speak for 5 minutes and get your point across clearly so that we don't have filibustering. But in 29 seconds, you're going to hear a whole loud ding, 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 and that kicks somebody off right in the middle of a thought possibly. Not everybody is clear and as concise as I am, and they may need an extra few seconds to finish a thought. But that's why we're here. And that is why somebody had to stand up. Because it should have been done the right way with an emergency ordinance. And that is in the home charter. That could have been done that way. And we asked you to do it that way. And y'all didn't have the courtesy to listen to what we were trying to tell you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. We appreciate your comments and your civility. Anybody else?
No one else has signed up at this point.
I will leave the public hearing open. If anyone else would like to speak, they can do so at this time. We will close the public hearing and move on to our presentation. Mr. Douglas, strategic planning update.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and the public in attendance tonight, and watching online as we stream. I'm here to give you guys a quick update on the status of our progress on the strategic plan so far. And looks like my fonts didn't load right, so that's a stinker. Real quickly, just as a refresher, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the process. We've talked about it a lot, but just as a reminder for people who may not be aware, strategic planning process occurred from beginning in February of 2020 and kind of lasted through most of the year last year. But we really kicked it off by launching a website called ImagineNixa.com, and that was live from February through June. And that was started with some 6 strategic vision statements that were adopted by the council at the time. And you guys kind of set a vision for the city and said, how do we make this vision happen? What needs to be done specifically for us to be able to achieve these 6 visions for our community? And we asked the community to give us that input over about 4 months on that website. We had 433 registered users of the site. We had over 9,000 site visits. 576 ideas and comments were submitted on the wall of ideas. That was one of the engagement tools on the website. 142 responses to a survey, over 1,000 contributions to the discussion forums, and those represented 813 different visitors who all participated in those discussions. And that whole conversation is still live and viewable on imaginenixon.com. You can't make comments now, but you can still see the comments that we received through that process. Then we reviewed the public input from Imagine Nixa with the advisory committee. We had 27 hours of discussion and crafted 60 action plans, and those were crafted by 15 members of the community that represented a diverse cross-section of the community. Amy Hoostret was on that committee before she served on council. And what they crafted was really kind of built in kind of 3 layers. So there's those 6 strategic priorities that were set by council to kind of give the community kind of a starting point as far as what should our priorities be. And then we had the action plans, which were crafted by those 15 community members, not council members and not staff, just community members who live inside the city limits. And they described what specifically we should be achieving over the next 5 years. And then action steps are kind of the bottom layer. That's the really specific nitty-gritty of how we make those things happen. What are the steps that have to happen to make those goals, those action plans really come to fruition? And action steps are kind of incremental, and they're written mostly by staff, although some of the ideas came from the committee, some of them were pulled directly from ideas that were posted on imaginenixon.com and from other citizens. So the action steps that we're going to present today this is kind of the first time we're actually going to talk about action steps with the public, because we didn't get down to that level with them, because when the advisory committee crafted, and they voted unanimously on the wording of each action plan, is kind of those are the goals that we have to achieve. Then staff is kind of challenged with trying to figure out, okay, what specifically do we actually have to do to make that a reality? And so that can kind of evolve over time, right? As situations change and as budgets change and all that stuff, we have to be flexible as staff to react and adjust our plans. So what we're going to present today are just those things which are completed, newly operational, or in progress and underway since adoption of the plan. So any questions really quickly about the process? No? Great. So strategic vision statement that you guys set was, the city of Nixa will be a high-performance government creating a safe community, reliable infrastructure, and sustainable economy with a vibrant atmosphere united by hometown spirit. So tonight, we're just going to dive into the status of high-performance government, because of 6 areas, that's 60 action plans. That's a whole lot of updating to give you guys. I mean, it represents thousands of action steps, really, that staff are undergoing. We do a lot of walking and chewing gum at the same time, right? And so we're not going to go over, my thing is jumping around on me. We're not going to go over all 6 of the strategic priority areas. Tonight, we're just going to focus on high-performance government, give you an update, a thorough update on that, and then I can come back either next month or in 2 months and give you an update on the next section, and so on and so forth. That way we don't, because if I gave you an update on the whole strategic plan, it would take 3 days. So we're going to eat this elephant in small bites, okay? So what do we mean by high-performance government? We will continue to create effective, diverse, and innovative teams within the municipal organization, which will use efficient processes to produce measurable and actionable results as we provide high-quality public services in a way that is clear, accountable, and financially responsible while engaging citizens and residents. In order to improve processes and productivity across all departments, the city shall, action plan number 1, streamline processes in an intuitive manner that reduces effort across all departments. That's the action plan that was written by the Strategic Planning Advisory Committee and adopted by council. So what have we done to try to accomplish action plan 1? Well, so far in 2021, we have 6 action steps that have been assigned to staff, and that includes Jimmy. He's assigned some of those things to himself. He's assigned things to every other department director, and then department directors have the ability to sub-assign action steps to their staffs as is appropriate. In progress, in the police department, under this would be that the niche system is now tracking police time spent on tasks. I don't think we really had a really good system in the past for tracking that staff time, and that's going to provide us in about a year's time, once we have a full year of data, we'll have a little bit more information about how our police staff are actually spending their time, so that we can start to try to figure out, is there any efficiency that we can gain there? Also in progress is that we are looking into implementing a new ERP software that would be a significant action step to assist in the accomplishment of this action plan. And we have hired Baker Tilly as a consultant to help us identify an ERP software system that would really kind of unite all of our software on the back end of the city and make us much more efficient as staff as we're managing all the various tasks that we do as a city. And another thing that would help us accomplish this action plan would be eventual creation of an integration between that ERP system once it's online with our new website that we're going to be developing over the next year. Any questions over Action Plan 1? Action Plan 2, in order to improve processes and productivity across all departments, so we're still in that kind of section of action plans, we're going to update levels of technology and digital security to protect citizen data and city data. There are 6 action steps currently assigned. One of them is already being completed. That's an assessment of current technology deficiencies with PIC Technology Group's assistance. That was completed here recently. And in progress, we have a SCADA upgrade ongoing in the Public Works Department. And we have Jimmy will be requesting in the 2022 budget for an upgrade of network switches, the implementation of two-factor authentication for our email, and adding a new server and conducting maintenance on the current servers that we have. All of those things will help us accomplish Action Plan number 2 if approved in the 2022 budget. Any questions about Action Plan 2? Action Plan 3, in order to attract and retain well-qualified talent and build effective teams, the City of Nixa shall identify and address staffing needs in order to meet community demands and provide efficient services. There are 2 action steps currently assigned under this plan. None of them have been completed or are in progress currently, not quite yet, as those action steps have not actually been scheduled to begin yet in 2021. Keep in mind, this is a 5-year plan. Some of these action steps are not really scheduled to kind of get underway even for a couple years. And even then, you know, as you're going to find as we go through this update, we've got staff managing a lot of different things. We can't do all of it all at the same time, right? We kind of have to focus on a priority and then we can pivot to another one. In order to attract and retain well-qualified talent and build effective teams, the City of Nixa shall offer compensation, benefits, and training, which are all competitive. This is a big area, and there's a lot of different ideas, a lot of different things that we can try to do to accomplish this, and there are 12 action steps currently assigned. 2 of those are completed already. One is that we're already providing free memberships to the X Center for all full-time employees. That was implemented effective January 1 of this year. And also we have improved our communications about benefits by creating monthly benefit minute videos for our staff. So that's a partnership between Amanda and I. She's not here tonight, or maybe she's in the back. She's out there. She's guarding the door.
Security.
She and I were working together on creating monthly videos where we'd kind of recap and explain what the benefits are for city employees, and trying to give something that's a little more digestible and a way to communicate to our employees, make them more aware of what the benefits are that we actually already offer. However, due to low viewership numbers on those videos, we've had a full year of videos, and we're going to discontinue that due to low views, and we think that we can pivot now to written communications and as supplemented with graphics and things like that. But we'll keep that archive of those videos we've already created available for our staff on the website as explainers of things like give me a topic of something we've done. How FMLA works. We've done videos and things like that. And then we've requested in the 22 budget that the city administrator will present a proposal to begin a gradual transition to a non-contributory retirement system. And also he will be requesting in the 22 budget a salary survey to occur in 2022. 2022 is really a tongue twister for me for some reason. In order to attract and retain well-qualified talent and build effective teams, the City of Nixa shall ensure talent attraction efforts reach diverse professional and student organizations. There are 5 action steps currently assigned here. 2 are already operational. One is that's effective since the 2021 budget. We're now budgeting to advertise job postings in a variety of local, state, and national outlets where we were not currently posting those jobs in the past. And we're also now posting jobs at colleges in ways that we were not in the past, and hoping to attract some of those, that diverse student body that's really brought into MSU and Drury and Evangel and the colleges around here. In the 22 budget, we're going to expand the job marketing and publications that are aimed at diverse audiences. In order to further embrace diversity as an organization, the City of Nixa shall, Action Plan 6, develop and implement guidelines for visually portraying diversity in communications and marketing materials. There's one action step. It's really kind of, it's just the action plan itself. It's pretty kind of cut and dry what we have to do there. And that's going to be addressed in the city's new brand style guide, which is currently being developed by the communications department. Macy and I are working with a graphic design professor and branding kind of expert from Drury University on kind of updating our branding, and he's going to help us with things including this. It includes visual identity, includes photography guidelines, fonts, colors, voice, and how we speak and how we write when we're creating official communications for the city. So it's going to cover some things like this. In order to maintain financial responsibility, the City of Nixa shall, Action Plan 7, provide voters with opportunities to secure new revenue sources to ensure the long-term financial stability of the city. There are 2 action steps currently assigned, and in the 22 budget, the city is seeking consulting and research funding so that we can do that research with Baker Tilly regarding which ballot issues might be most supported by the community. In order to maintain financial responsibility, the City of Nixa shall, Action Plan 8, expand financial transparency efforts to educate the public about city finances. There are 4 action steps assigned here. One's in progress, one's operational, and 2 are not yet in progress. The budget summary document will be created once the 22 budget is finalized in December to make the budget a little bit easier to understand for the average citizen. The budget document is pretty thick and a lot of detail, and so we want to try to scoop some of the more digestible data and charts and things like that and some visual things, and Jennifer will be developing that once the budget is passed. And then she has also worked to create a PAFR, that's a popular annual financial report for the 2020 financials, which is going to extract information from the comprehensive annual report to make the city's finances easier to understand for the average citizen. So what's the difference between these two? One is, what's our current budget? How do we explain that to the public? But also, looking at the past year, what was the budget and how did we actually end up spending? What was our actual revenue? What was our actual spending looking like? And so trying to make sure that both of those things are clear to the public. And not yet in progress. The new website, once we have that launched next year, will include some pages for the current year budget summary and previous year PAFR. So we'll do kind of a digital version of those documents. And we plan to make some videos to help explain our financial processes and practices so the average viewer has a better sense of what we do with taxpayer dollars. In order to improve communications and civic engagement, the City of Nixa shall, Action Plan 9, expand and enhance message distribution systems, procedures, and protocols to improve public awareness of city news, events, and program offerings. There are 8 action steps currently assigned. In progress, the communications department is developing that new brand style guide that we talked about a little bit earlier. And that will really be a toolkit to assist with consistent design, voice, and visual identity across all of our communications. Also in progress, the communications department is developing a written communications strategy document to outline our best practices and current strategies, including some checklists for various situations. And so that will help us be consistent from instance to instance, and when we have similar situations, we're going to behave similar ways in our communications. And then if I were to get hit by a bus one day, you'd have kind of an instruction manual for how to run the communications department. Operational, we are already enhancing the city's social media presence to promote meaningful and constructive engagement with all target demographics. We've done that by expanding our LinkedIn and Instagram presences And we're continuing to evolve our social media strategy. That's always going to be in kind of an ongoing thing where we're trying to figure out how we can really make sure that the engagement that's happening on our platforms is designed to be positive and community building. It can be tough sometimes when things get controversial and folks can get angry at each other and things like that, but we really want to try to find ways to foster community development. And we don't want to just post things because they're firebrands. We don't want to just post stuff that'll get a lot of engagement because it's controversial. We want to try to post stuff that's important, that people need, that's important information for their lives. And from a transparency perspective, that we're going to where people spend their time, right? They're spending time on their phone, on Facebook, and so we want to get to their feed and get them the information they need to know about their city. And we're also implementing language which embraces all forms of diversity across all strategic communications and marketing messages. It's really kind of simple. We've really done that from day one, but I think we really, from the strategic planning process, learned that the community wants us to be careful that we're choosing our words kindly. It's about kindness. It's not about political correctness or trying to have strict rules about wording. It's just about trying to make sure that we're being kind and friendly to everybody. In order to improve communications and civic engagement, the City of Nixa shall, Action Plan 10, design and utilize a city app which is integrated with a website. There's one action step. It's just design and utilize a city app, and that's in progress. We actually notified a vendor today that we've decided that we're wanting to bring a contract to council. At the next council meeting, you guys should be able to see the first, to see a resolution for a contract for us to start moving forward towards the website and app development for next year. And that dovetails right into the website. So we want to redesign Nixa.com to be more functional, interactive, and user-friendly. There are 2 action steps there. One is actually building a website, and second is actually building that integration with that ERP software so we can actually do some digital city hall kind of services where our citizens can really get processes done quickly and easily without any paperwork, and make those processes also very efficient for our staff on the back end as they manage those things. And this is the last one. In order to improve communications and civic engagement, the City of Nixa shall, Action Plan 12, implement a virtual platform for broadcasting city council meetings. As you guys know tonight, we're streaming right now. So this one's accomplished. We've already knocked this one out. There were 3 steps to it. One was kind of developing a policy and procedure for how we would do it. The second one was implementing the required technology. We've got that all installed here in the back, and PIC Technology helped us install that technology. And now we are broadcasting our meetings to YouTube, and we have an archive there where people can see past meetings. So, summary. We have 12 action plans under high-performance government, 1 action plan fully completed and operational in less than a year. That's pretty good, right? 10 other action plans, and this is the thing that I think I'm most proud of, is that 10 of the other action plans, so 1's done, and 10 others have already seen some progress, that staff are already working on behind the scenes to making 10 of these other ones. So that's 11 out of 12 that we're already making progress on to some degree. And that represents 52 action steps that have been assigned to staff, and of those, half are already either completed, operational, in progress, or are going to be requested in the 22 budget that you guys will see at the next budget workshop as things that staff are requesting to help us accomplish the strategic plan. So, with that, any other questions about our progress on high-performance government?
Any questions for Drew?
Will this presentation be available to the public other than just through watching the video of the meeting?
I can certainly post it to the website.
Okay.
Yep.
The PowerPoint.
Yeah, you can link to the PowerPoint on the agenda. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Anything else? Thank you, Mr. Douglas.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Drew.
Got great, moving forward very well on all those plans. Very good. Good job, staff. All right, we'll move on to our ordinance section. First reading, please, Ms. Robin.
First reading, Council Bill Number 2021-101, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa, amending Chapter 20 of the Nixa City Code to modify several provisions of the city code related to the city's speed limit regulations.
Good evening, Mayor. I'll give Drew a second. There we go. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm before the council this evening to discuss Council Bill 2021-101. We're going to start with just a brief summary because we're going to get into the details a little later on in the presentation. But as you can glean from the title, this bill would modify several sections of the Nixa City Code related to our speed limit regulations. So why is this being brought up? What's the purpose behind these regulations? Well, it's to clarify and attempt to ease the enforcement of the city's speed limit regulations and to provide a formal process for establishing and modifying speed limits. So these purposes, or the purpose behind these changes is made a little clearer if you do some historical context here. And what I'm talking about is the history of the code. So you may all be aware, in 2012, the city recodified its code of ordinances. Recodification is a process where the code is reorganized. It's done pretty routinely by cities, and part of that process is to review if code sections need to continue and organize existing code sections into different chapters and just kind of clean up the whole code. So that's the deadline, or that's the date we're going to keep in mind going forward on this. So in 2012, the city conducted this recodification. Prior to this recodification, the city's speed limit regulations were contained in Chapter 12, Article 4 of the 2007 code. So we're in the 2012 code. In the 2007 code, these regulations were found in that chapter. And these regulations were established, the speed limits themselves were established in a schedule that was contained within the text of the code. So I provided that information to the council tonight. It was attached to the memorandum that was accompanying this bill. It's labeled Memorandum Attachment 1, so you can see how those regulations were drafted. And what you'll see is there will be sections in those code sections that say a speed limit of 45 miles per hour is established for the following streets, and it will list out the portions of streets or those streets where that was established. That was good, in my opinion. During the recodification, this code section was repealed, and so those ordinances are not in the code anymore. Looking into this, researching this, the justification that I was able to locate is that the council at the time adopted a new code section, Section 20-181, which is in the current code. And this section reads in part that the established signs, signals, devices, and markings in place on the adoption date of this code are hereby ratified and shall be considered to have been authorized by the city. So what effect did this have? Well, it froze the speed limits in place at the time of the recodification, again, 2012, but it doesn't provide a process to modify or adopt new speed limits, okay? And that's really the issue or the concern, the main concern. So I've highlighted 3 concerns that I see with this approach. First, as we've sort of discussed already, there's no procedure to modify existing speed limits or to establish new speed limits. Why might the city want to establish new speed limits? Well, oftentimes, or modify existing speed limits. Sometimes we make improvements to city streets. Oftentimes, after that's accomplished, there's a traffic study that's done, and that's usually the metric that you use to determine what the appropriate and safe speed limit is on a city street. Right now, there's no process to do that. Similarly, if we annex territory that's in unincorporated Christian County, there's no process for the city to establish a speed limit over that street currently in the code. So an additional concern, in my view, this is, from a prosecution standpoint, it creates a confusing manner of having to prove up what the established speed limit is. So in municipal ordinance prosecutions, one of the burdens that the city has is to prove what the law is. And this is sort of related to the third point. Right now, we're relying on old language that was repealed technically to establish what the actual speed limit is. So all this said, in my view, there's a clearer way to accomplish this, and the council bill before you this evening is an attempt to do that. And so to see how we're trying to do that, I'm now going to go into a discussion of some of the specific changes that we're making in this bill. So what I've done is I've labeled the section of the council bill where you'll find where these sections of current code are modified or we're adding a new code provision. So first we have Section 1. This modifies Section 20-38 of the city code. And what this change is trying to do is clarify who the traffic engineer is, okay? And the amendment that's being made here is to declare that the Director of Public Works or their designee will function as a traffic engineer for the city. So currently, the city code has language that there is a traffic engineer, and this traffic engineer is authorized to perform various functions that are delegated to them in terms of traffic control regulation. So when yield intersections are placed, stop intersections are placed, what traffic lanes are designed for what, that's under the purview of the traffic engineer. So this changes just to clarify who that is and for purposes of the code. Next, we have Section 2, which modifies Section 20-252. This is just a cleanup that clarifies that state speed laws are effective on state streets within the city limits unless the city has established its own speed for that route. So that's to cover a situation where if we annex a state route, that annexation doesn't annul the state speed limit, that's just adopted by reference until the city were to either establish the same speed limit by ordinance or establish its own speed limit after a traffic study. Then we get to Section 3, which is where the process for how we're going forward, if this is approved, going to establish speed limits. So it would modify Section 20-254 of the city code, and it would authorize the traffic engineer, which is why it was important to determine more specifically who that individual is, to establish the speed limits in the city based on traffic engineering judgment and public safety concerns, which basically means we're going to be doing a traffic study to determine what level of speed is appropriate for the street as it's designed or what the traffic flow is on the street. Additionally, the modifications to this section would require that these established speed limits be filed with the city clerk for public inspection. So this is a documentation component so that when the administrative official performs his function, the result of that determination is somehow retained and on file for public inspection. So if there's a dispute about what the established speed limit is, there's an originating document that we can go back to, which is important from a prosecution standpoint again. And finally, it requires, the amendments to this section require that notice of the established speed limit has to be evidenced by the placement of signs, which is a fairly typical practice that we're just codifying here. So the modifications we're making to this section, it's really codifying a process the city is already engaged in, just providing the legal framework to back up those determinations. So we're going to continue on with the description of the specific changes. We have Section 4. This modifies Section 20-256. That section relates to the speed limits for construction and school zones. What we're doing here is just providing a more formal process, sort of like before, on how those special speed zones are established. And they're set out in their own section because their operation is temporary. For school zones, it's temporary based on time. For construction zones, it's temporary based on the length of the project. And then we go to Section 5, which is the only new section that we're adding to the code. And this would be, the big reason for this is it's trying to provide a uniform violation section for all the various speeding offenses. So there's a speeding offense for construction zone, school zone, city, or the state adopt the state referenced section. So instead of requiring the police department when they file their uniform citations with me to cite to each of those specific sections, we're just going to state in the code, if this is adopted, that it's a violation of 20-257 to violate or exceed the speed limit as authorized in those other sections, which is a typical thing that you'll see in statutory drafting where the rule will be articulated in various sections, and then there's a section at the end or close to the end that says it's a violation of this section to violate those sections. Additionally, it will provide 2 additional ordinance violations for if a vehicle is operated at a speed greater than is reasonable and prudent under the conditions and existing. This is to cover a situation where if the established speed limit is 55 miles per hour, but there's ice on the road and the vehicle's sliding, that is an ordinance violation. So you can't, there's no technical argument of, well, I was technically going under the established speed limit. Well, the facts on the ground are going to control that. Similarly, there would be language added to the code regarding traveling at such a slow speed that it's impeding the normal flow of traffic. And finally, it would establish the code would then establish a rebuttable presumption that the posted speed limit, so what's on the sign, is the established speed limit. So what that's trying to do is shift the burden so again, the city has to prove up what the law is and prove up what the established speed limit is. So this language would shift that to the city having to prove the sign is correct to the defendant having to demonstrate that no, the sign is wrong. And so these final code provisions here, they're modeled off of language that is found throughout the state of Missouri in city ordinances on this topic, and also in the state statutes on the regulation of speed on state-controlled routes in unincorporated territory. So they have this rebuttable presumption language as well. And then finally, we have Section 6. This section would approve the initial speed schedule. So as we've discussed, the Public Works Director, traffic engineer, they would have the authority to establish the speed limits on city streets after doing a traffic study and taking into account public safety considerations, which is just the traffic study, and then approving those. So that we don't have no speed limits while that goes on, we have this Council Bill Exhibit A, which is the initial speed schedule, so to speak. And so that will be adopted by council by ordinance if this is approved. And then the authority to the traffic engineer to modify speed limits would be modifying that schedule under the authority of that ordinance. So we're trying to not have a gap. So we're establishing what's out there today. This document was compiled in collaboration with the Public Works Department and the Police Department. And the intent is to establish or capture what's established today. And then as the city is aware of potential issues to review, which we had something come up last meeting where it was brought to council's attention that there was a speed limit that might need to be looked at, then the traffic engineer, pursuant to the authority delegated to them under this ordinance, would perform those functions and either amend it or not based on what the traffic study would yield. So that's the conclusion. To summarize, these are the major changes that I see from the bill. And really, the intent here is to try to clarify a convoluted process. It doesn't need to be convoluted, and provide more clarity on what the city's regulations is, and also codify a process that we're sort of already utilizing. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions the council may have on this matter.
So the initial speed limit schedule is just that, it's just initial? 'Cause
Yes.
one of the things council used to vote on each individual speed limit change, which was onerous, and we didn't.
Yes. So I see the
We're
intent.
not experts at that, and that's not what we should be doing.
It seems to me like there was intent when it was codified to move to this system.
Yes.
There just wasn't the follow-through, in my opinion, on that. And this is trying to get us there because we're sort of already doing it. So no, and I didn't want to be at a place where the council is acting in a perfunctory manner, where we've done a traffic study, we need to take it to you to approve it. Like, you can just delegate that authority because there's no discretion. It's what does the study yield, and implement it.
Would we need to change the signs at the city limits that state that our speed limit is 25 miles per hour unless otherwise?
No, that's great, actually. So the way the code is structured is the default is it's a 25 mile per hour speed limit unless modified pursuant to either the authority that we have now or the authority that would be adopted if this were approved. And actually, that's trying to accomplish a state law requirement that you have to provide notice of your speed limits to folks that are coming in from outside of the city limits. And typically, the way that cities do that is they have a sign that says, hey, it's 25 miles per hour unless otherwise specified. So that should not, that should be retained.
I had a resident I was speaking to who had the idea of having a traffic commission. I've
Yep.
never heard of that around here, that would kind of review those types of requests.
My prior municipality had a traffic advisory committee or commission, I'm not sure it was a C. And that was something that the traffic engineer would take to them, just so there's that additional public input on the streets of the city. So that if that's something that council wants to look at, that could be established and written into the law.
Okay.
Or whatever council's direction would be on that.
Maybe if you guys want to think about that and come up, we don't have to have another discussion about it, but just send a memo out to us, what your thoughts on such a thing would be. If we don't have enough stuff that would, keep such a commission busy, or think it's a good idea, or you can do other things like parking and other elements like that, right? So that we have questions on sometimes. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
We we will open a public hearing if you would like to speak to this item.
My name's Jeff Belcher. I live in Nixon, Missouri. I've got a question as far as that traffic study you mentioned. Is that something MoDOT would take care of, or would that be a financial burden to the city?
The city does have a traffic engineer, I believe.
Yeah, we currently have a contract with 2 engineering firms
Okay.
that would do that.
So
I
we
was
do
just
traffic
curious.
studies. We do traffic studies on new subdivisions and things like that.
Okay. I was just
Regular
trying to
basis.
prevent any incurration of any more expenses at the city council, to the city regarding the special election. I've seen that come up quite a bit on the city's website, your reelection website, or staying in power website, whichever it is. Again, I'm going to go back to, with so many complaints about the budget and what that's going to cost the city, is maybe just reiterate and hit it again that my very first council meeting, that was one of the things I asked for, was to just rescind the order or do it the right way. It was brought up every meeting. There was another lady spoke this, my first meeting. She followed up behind me, spoke the exact same thing. Table it, discuss it some more, and put it up for a vote. That wasn't even me, that wasn't Ron, that was just another citizen that was concerned. So my question would be is, why were we so afraid to put it up for a vote when that's the job of the council?
You want to put up?
It was,
You want to put up?
I can wait for responses until I'm done, I don't want my time
Okay.
interfered.
Could ask a question.
I don't know if it would have required an emergency ordinance to do a vote. I mean, a vote, simple process. I see you guys do it all the time. It takes 30 seconds.
I
I've
think
gone
maybe you're
back,
on a
I've gone
separate
back through.
topic
Please don't
here,
interrupt me,
Mr.
please.
Belcher.
This is my time.
Sir, Mr.
I've gone
Belcher,
through.
Mr. Belcher.
I'm allowed my 5 minutes, am I not?
During the public hearing of an ordinance, you must speak on that particular ordinance. You're speaking on, is your assumption?
On finances.
Pause for a second there, Drew. I'm going to ask Mr. Belcher a question. Mr. Belcher, are you asking for us to allow the public to vote on codifying the speed limits in the city of Nixa?
No, my question was about the finances involved with a traffic study,
Okay,
because it's been a hot topic with expenditures in the city,
sure.
As a finance question.
Okay. So you are not asking us to have the public vote on this particular ordinance?
Not particularly. I was just, again, trying to find out what the expense to the city was going to be, because that is a hot topic button here as of late with the recall being initiated.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Drew.
So that being the case, if it takes 30 seconds to do a vote, I asked, Ron's asked, Ms. Hernandez asked in October, why can't we have a vote? We could have avoided a $15,000 expense. It would have, sounds like the smart thing to those people complaining, to avoid that expense if we could. And a simple action is taking a vote. Again, I don't know if an emergency ordinance was necessary for that. I do know, however, that since September, we have had 3 emergency ordinances come through. September 14th, we had an emergency ordinance that means 1 reading, 2 readings, and vote right there in the same meeting. However, that was to vote to accept $52,610. There was another one on October the 26th, again, to accept funding in the amount of $62,181. November the 23rd, we had another emergency ordinance where we don't have time to table it, we don't have time to discuss it, we've got to push it through in one setting. And again, that was a request to accept $160,330. So we're talking about $15,000. Executive sessions, there was 3 of them from September to November. There was no mention of it whatsoever, what they were regarding. There was 2 more dated April the 12th and May the 10th of this year, 2021. Somehow the notes made it to the minutes. I guess those were regarding, well, I'm sorry, there was 3. One of them was about a hiring and firing policy within the city government. The other two were regarding the lease, purchase, or sale of real estate. My question would be is why is the city citizens not allowed to know what's going on with our lease, purchase, or sale of real estate? I just found that kind of an odd, why would that be kept from the public? Why would that have to be held in an executive session? And then last, and I've only got a few seconds left here, I did note that there was one special meeting held with City Council throughout this entire pandemic. And all that was to make sure we could push through getting fireworks for our football game. Because I'm pretty sure that couldn't have waited a week or two to table it the proper way. Thank you.
Does someone want to explain executive session? And Mr. Woodman, I don't know if you.
Sure.
Sure.
Under
Thank
the
you, Mr. Woodman.
state sunshine law, the council can close their meetings when, under 21 exceptions, but it's actually greater than 21 because there's an exception that says or any other law. So oftentimes this is done because sensitive matters are discussed. If there is something discussed at a closed session for real estate or leasing, that's designed to allow for the free negotiation between the public governmental body, the city in this case, and a tenant, buyer, seller, you name it, in a real estate transaction. Because sometimes knowledge of those deals is, the cities can be slow. They conduct their business in the public, and sometimes that can be prejudicial to the taxpayer, because if someone learns that a public governmental body is attempting to acquire property, there can be some pricing issues that can affect the taxpayer. So the General Assembly, when they adopted the Sunshine Law in the 70s, decided that this was something that was allowed to be closed under that law. And the same kind of concerns are present with the personnel exception. Oftentimes, performance ratings, conduct, those sorts of things are discussed, and routinely HR and personnel files are kept confidential and closed. And so the General Assembly, again, recognized that this would be something that the public benefit of seeing this information versus closing it, weighed in favor of closing it. And most of the other exceptions articulated in that statute come out on that side of that equation.
Thank you, Mr. Woodman. Yes, so when we're negotiating the purchase of property, we don't want the seller to know what our top dollar would be that we would spend, just as if you were purchasing property. So we have those discussions in private, and then we later bring them up in public, which we'll be doing in one of the next meetings. And then also, we don't make our personnel, I think would be illegal, highly illegal, to make our personnel evaluations public as well. Those are the main two things I think we have ever had in special session. We'll leave the public hearing open. If anyone else would like to speak, you can do so at this time. We're talking about speed limits, right? Yes, and we are talking about this particular speed limit ordinance. Please, Mr. Sanders.
100%.
Thank you.
He might have been warming me up here because I was okay when I read it the first time, and when he came up here and briefed it, my brain started to hurt just a little bit. My name is Ron Sanders at 976 Glen Oaks Drive. What really hurt my brain was a city traffic engineer would have the power to make speed limits and determine everything, and you guys don't want to have to vote on it like you had been doing for a while. I don't know how many times in the past.
In a decade or so since.
In the past year, how many times have we changed a speed limit somewhere in the city limits?
So I said we haven't done that in a decade or so.
Okay.
It used to be
So-
done in the past when the city was a lot smaller. The city council would adopt each individual speed
So-
limit, but now we don't.
Right, so what you would have happening here is you would have a city engineer that would determine that this road that I don't know, 300 or 400 people live on or drive on to and from work would be affected. And they're not elected, they're appointed or they're contracted out, so you really don't have any interaction with them at all. And then they're changing the speed limits and they're changing people's lives. Now we have citations that are going to be written based on what a non-elected official determined based on this ordinance. That's kind of like passing the buck to the city engineer, and where would the oversight be? As a trucking company manager, I deal with that at the federal level. We have the FMCSA and the US DOT make all kinds of rules for truck drivers. And because it never goes through Congress, it has a very lengthy and very specific process where they have to give people 6 months time to speak out, about a proposed rule change. They got to do it publicly. They have to publish it in national magazines and national newspapers and all this kind of stuff. I don't see that here. I don't see any requirement where the city manager would really have to make an effort to let everybody know that that these changes are happening. So that would be a very serious issue. And ultimately, when something changes in an ordinance, this is where the people should be able to come to address those issues. And that's not here either. That's what really bothers me, is that that's not here. If a change happened, okay, and I can tell you about, we're already a big problem with traffic here getting to work if we all work up in Springfield or over in Ozark or anywhere where it's not close by. And now you're going to have a city engineer changing stuff because of safety studies, okay? And none of y'all are really going to be involved in that. Actually, this kind of takes you completely out of the whole process. And that's serious because you guys are elected, and you guys are the ones that would say, whoa, wait a second. We got 400 people, and 300 of them work up at Mercy and Cox and Springfield, and now you're going to change the speed limit from 35 to 25 on Gregg Road, and from 45 or 40 or whatever it is on Nicholas down to 30. And now we have 400 or 500 people all driving to work between 7:30 and 8 o'clock a.m., and now they have to go slower. So instead of taking 25 minutes to get to work, now it takes 35 minutes to get to work. Think about all of the extended, things that would have an impact on our community. People would stop moving here. They'd be like, I'm not going to spend 45 minutes to drive to work because I work on the north side of Springfield. I'm going to go find some place where it's closer to 65 so I can get right on there and get out of there. So there's some serious problems with this, and it all starts with, an elected official should be involved here somewhere. Okay? Elected officials should be involved here somewhere along this process. And yes, I do think that the city council should vote on all of the changes finally, as a final thing. If nobody comes in here and talks, we spend maybe a minute and a half going through the ordinance. Y'all talk about it for maybe a minute, maybe 3 or 4 minutes we'd spend on a change of a speed limit, and then everybody would vote yes, unless you got a whole bunch of emails from your constituents. So it's really not a big burden for the city council to have to review this stuff and have to vote on it anyways. And it is an oversight thing. Yes, a traffic engineer would be the one side, but, we do have to have oversight. And ultimately, if you're going to charge someone with an offense to an ordinance, that should be passed by y'all and not changed by a non-elected official. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Belcher. We'll leave open the public, or Mr. Sanders, sorry. We'll leave open the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Any further discussion?
I'll speak on a few things. I believe that one of the reasons this is brought up is because currently Norton Road is at 25 miles per hour. And with the extension of Truman, that will likely be increased. When a traffic engineer does a study, generally they look at a variety of factors. They look at safety concerns, but they also look at speed. One of the main issues, main ways to detect speed is by looking at the 85th percentile. And so what we do there is we look at how fast 85% of the people that drive that road feel comfortable driving that road, because people basically set the speed limit. If a road is designed to be 45 and the speed limit is 35, generally they'll go around the 45 mile per hour mark. And so what you do is you look at, okay, 85% of these people are comfortable driving 45 or less, So maybe we should increase that speed. If there's ends up being a ton of crashes and stuff, it's like, okay, the road might not be designed for a 45 mile per hour speed limit. Most of the people in that 85th percentile driving 40 or lower, maybe we should reduce that speed. So the people drive the speed limit from the 85th percentile number. So.
And I believe, the reason we made that transition, Mr. Peterson can correct me if I'm wrong, I think was that in many cases we would have the public come and say, we would like this speed limit increased. We would like it to go from 25 to 35. And city council would say, okay, let's increase it 25 to 35. And then another group of citizens would come in and say, I would like that reduced from 35 to 25. And we had no backing or reason. It was just the request of the citizens. And so without having it's nice that on our council we have a expert in those matters that we can turn to and ask, but not every council will have that into the future. And having experts weigh in on things is the best way to proceed in many ways. That's why we have financial experts, we have engineering experts that come, we have experts in real estate that come and present to us, we have experts in all areas that come and present to the city and provide us with what the best alternatives are.
So if we were to create a traffic committee, how would that play out? Because we'd have the engineer that would look at it, and would he or she provide recommendations to?
I assume it would be similar probably to planning and zoning, right? So there would be, you would have, they would have some sort of periodic meetings where these items would be brought to them. They could review them and have a public hearing on the changes and then present those through, so.
That's my experience with that form of committee, is that they make recommendations to the engineer and have public meetings where those things are discussed. So there's that extra element of public engagement.
Okay.
And the council has the power to establish these sorts of commissions. It would be like the Planning and Zoning Commission or the Board of Adjustment. So we'd be creating a new board, which is kind of exciting. And it'd be up to council to determine how they would want that board to function.
So we could, similar to, we used to have a parks board, which they made the decisions on the parks and they didn't come to city council, that board made those specific sets of decisions that were, we also had a utility board,
Yeah.
long,
Council would delegate.
many years before any of us. And so, okay, so it's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
Where was I? Oh, any other discussion? No? All right, move on to the next one, Cindy.
First reading, Council Bill Number 2021-102, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa, amending Chapter 6, Article 1, Section 6-6 of the Nixa City Code to provide for a defense for violations of such section.
Good evening. Yes, this ordinance, as we get ready to open our dog park, needs a little bit of amending and clarification. This is the pet waste ordinance for the city. Basically, as the ordinance currently reads, for your pet to defecate on city property or property that you do not own would be a violation of that ordinance. What we are trying to clean that up to be just a little bit here is to make the offense if you don't immediately pick up and dispose of in a sanitary way, the violation would exist. And so as we get prepared for the dog park to open, we wanted to make sure we had this clarified and amended to align with that opening of the dog park.
I didn't realize your dog couldn't defecate on anyone else's property but your own.
That
We
is
probably, everyone who owns a dog has violated that. particular
very much so. I don't think that was the intent of that ordinance, but it is basically how it reads.
That is
And so-
interesting.
By just amending it to have them immediately pick up and then dispose of in a sanitary manner should make that a better ordinance.
Are we going to provide bags for that out at
Yes.
dog park?
Yeah, the pet waste
Then there's
stations
no
will be there.
excuse.
They will have bags
We do it at Woodfield
with them
already.
as well.
Yes, I was, but
our
I've had a
current
long
dog
day.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure my mind was good.
Any other,
I
oh,
do
sorry,
listen.
are you done?
I like
I'm
Any questions for Matt? Sorry, we were having such a good time with this.
Because somebody's going to ask me.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Make sure I have it all in order.
We will open up the public hearing. If you would like to speak to this item, you can do so at this time. Okay. Close the public hearing. Any further discussion?
I'm good.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to our resolutions.
There's one
Oh,
more second
I'm
reading.
sorry, I missed that. I apologize.
Second reading Council Bill Number 2021-092, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa amending Section 1-10 of the Nixa City Code to codify the court costs applicable to municipal ordinance violations.
Good evening again. I'm before the council again to discuss Council Bill 2021-092. Council had first reading of this bill at their September 27th, 2021 meeting. There were some questions that were asked by council at that last meeting regarding what components of the court costs would the city retain. I provided a supplemental memorandum to the council. It's included in your packet that details what court costs the city would retain as part of the amount that is being codified. I've also included the statutory references there. And an additional thing I would like to note is while reviewing this section, there was a typo that was discovered, and that's been corrected in the bill presented tonight. That's also highlighted in the supplemental memorandum, but to get it into the record, we've added the word dollars on line 39 after the word 3. So wanted to highlight that for council's attention as well. And with that, I'm happy to answer any other questions that the council may have.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Wood.
Thank you, sir.
We will open up the public hearing if you would like to speak to this item. And we will close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Motion to approve?
So made.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Justin Orff,
Yes.
Jared Giddens,
Yes.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Darlene Graham,
Yes.
Amy Hookstrat.
Yes.
All right. Now can we go on to the resolution, Cindy? Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Resolution number 2021-101, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa amending the city's personnel policies to provide for Victims' Economic Security and Safety Act leave.
Good evening.
Where'd you come from?
So today I'm bringing forward this personnel handbook policy change or amendment that will allow for VESA leave. And VESA stands for the Victims' Economic Safety and Security Act, which actually means that if we have an employee that is a victim of domestic or sexual assault, we can give them 2 weeks of unpaid leave. And so basically that's what that is. Do you have any questions?
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
We will open up the public hearing. If you would like to speak to this item. And we will close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Or any discussion at all? I guess we didn't have any initial discussion. Discussion? Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. It's okay.
Resolution number 2021-102, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to apply for and accept grant funding provided by the Nixa Community Foundation to support the Police Department's Citizen Police Academy program.
Mayor, Council, what you have before you tonight is a resolution that would authorize the city administrator to apply for and then accept a grant on the behalf of the Nixa Police Department for $1,500 to enhance our Citizens Police Academy. We're going to seek this grant from the Nixa Community Foundation, and the main goal here is to really support that program, to enhance it to a degree that it is, we're providing the best possible program for the public. Through the course of time, we've kept that budget relatively the same over the many years, and what we've seen is costs are rising, and some of the things that we had solicited, for example, we had asked for food donations when it came to feeding citizens in the academy because we do serve dinner. Some of those are drying up. Some businesses aren't able to do that anymore. Some have gone out of business and no longer are providing catering services, things of that nature. So what we've done is we've had to cut back on some of the things that we're doing there. We did offer shirts and identification badges along with note-taking materials and things of that nature. And what we're seeing is the prices on those things are rising over time, and so we're having to make decisions about whether we're going to have a more economical food choice, or maybe we're gonna, not have a certain type of shirt available, or maybe those note-taking materials are not available. And then finally, there are things that we'd like to offer in the future with some video training that we could bring in from outside that people could participate in. And if we can get this money procured through this grant, it would allow us to do some of those things. Any questions?
Any questions? You can't just make all the meals, Darlene?
I'd make all their desserts. Meals, that's a little bit too much.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
We will open the public hearing if you would like to speak to this item.
Next week, I think.
And we will close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Motion to approve?
So made.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Resolution number 2021-103, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to apply for and accept grant funding provided by the Nixa Community Foundation to acquire audio equipment for use by the Parks Department.
Good evening. We too would like to apply for and accept a grant from the Nixa Community Foundation, if awarded, for additional speakers for the Movies in the Park system and the speaker stands. Again, it's around $1,500, and would just allow us to more broaden the scope of the music and the movies, and kind of give more of a wraparound feel. This will also help us increase the longevity of our current speakers by taking some of the stress off those from having to have them turned up so loud that a couple extra speakers will be able to move around that. And then we're hoping to be able to provide a little bit of low end, some of that bass and things that go along with movies, just to give you more of that movie feel at our Movies in the Park.
Any questions? Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
We will open the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Motion to approve.
So made.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Resolution number 2021-104, a resolution of the Council of the City of Dixa authorizing the city administrator to apply for and accept a Nixa affiliate grant-making program grant provided by the Nixa Community Foundation to support the city's Listen, Encourage, Advocate, and Demonstrate initiative.
Cindy.
Mayor and council, the next two resolutions are actually mine. I'm asking for council to consider getting permission to apply for, and if awarded, accept a grant. The first one is from the Nixon Community Foundation. I'm applying for $500. This would fund, during the LEAD initiative that you all attended, the reoccurring theme was that there needed to be more community events, inclusive community events. And there is no money in the budget for the LEAD initiative. And so what I'd like to do is, if possible, if I get this grant, have a community event, an inclusive community event, in conjunction with the mayor's tree lighting ceremony. I'm thinking a cocoa with the community might be kind of fun. Have cocoa and coffee and cookies for everyone, and it's provided free of charge. I've been talking with Matt, and he's fine with that. He doesn't mind me barging in on his party. But I think this would be an awesome time to once again bring the community together and follow up with the momentum, the positive momentum from the initiative that we had with the diversity, the listening session we had.
Any questions? I like cocoa. Cocoa's good.
Cocoa with the
Cocoa's
community.
yummy.
Yeah.
We will open the public hearing.
Hey, Chef Belcher, I live in Nixa. Regarding this lead event, I did attend the last one. It was a decent presentation. I was surprised. Thank you, Cindy. Now, on that note, I believe part of the discussion that evening was bullying. Was I correct? There was a lot of discussion about bullying. I'd like to suggest maybe that we take a snapshot or a freeze frame of this meeting here this evening, because we've got a prime example of bullying from our pulpit right in front of us. Your threats, intimidation. I guess it probably started back when you made your mandate and moved our voice to the very back of the meeting. That was the beginning. And then you want to go and dictate under your emergency powers that our time limit is restricted to 5 minutes. Even though you want to sit here and speak for a minute and a half on my time and take that time away from me and not return it at the end. That's bullying. Then you got asked a couple of tough questions, got it under your skin a little bit. So the minute I went over my time, you're immediately pointing to the chief, do something about this. That's bullying if I've ever seen it. Is that any better than domestic violence? Hey, I'm the guy sitting here on top of my pedestal. You're going to do what I'm going to tell you. Is there a difference? I didn't see any other council pointing to the police chief. I didn't see the police chief jumping out of his chair like I was violating some kind of a rule that needed immediate assistance. You know, hey, him, get him, do something. It's bullying. So if you want to back this and endorse this lead program, maybe practice what you preach. And on that note, I'm going to make this one short. I'm going to get home. I would like to see somebody from council maybe say, hey, you know what? Let's eliminate the 5-minute deal. We've got the people back to the beginning where we belonged, which I don't know why we were moved to the back. I believe it was nothing but just simple way to quiet the crowd. You didn't want to hear what the people had to say. You knew the majority of these people had kids. They're in baseball and football, this and that. They've got practices. They can't come up here and sit till 9:30, 10 o'clock. Suppression is all that was. And then you want to mandate us to 5 minutes after moving us to the back. And then when we violate the rule of 5 minutes, we want to get law enforcement involved. Shame on you.
I'm very glad you brought that up, Mr. Belcher. I've seen that, the move the voice of the people thing a lot, and I think Mr. Sanders says that a lot as well. Went back and looked through some of the minutes, and it was members of your committee that requested that. You requested that you be able to speak at the end of the meeting, and so that you could speak on items that didn't have public hearings over the course of the meeting. And so we moved it specifically because of your requests. And then you want to call it some sort of corruption or some sort of, bullying that we followed, that we moved it in allowance with your request. And then you say, don't want people to be here for the 9:30 or 10 o'clock because they have kids. That's exactly why we limit the time, so that everyone has the opportunity to speak and everyone has the opportunity to get home so that they can go to work. Mr. Giddens gets up very early. Mr. Worf gets up very early. Ms. Graham, she's retired. She doesn't have to get up really early. But I also have to get up early, so limiting it to 5 minutes gives everyone the opportunity to speak and gives everyone the opportunity to get home at a reasonable time. So I thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Belcher.
For the record, there was no committee at that time.
I said members of the committee at that point. I'm not going to go into name calling and who did what, but yes, it was requested by members of your committee to move that. I'm very happy that we were able to move it back to where it originally and always had been, and I think that was great for everyone. Hopefully, at some point we can get to a time when we have meetings again that are only a couple hours long, like we've had in the past, and probably at that time we don't need the 5-minute limit anymore. All right, we will leave the public hearing open. If anyone else would like to speak, you can do so at this time.
I know all the people. Nobody ever asked to move the visitor section to the end of the meetings. Once it was moved, we objected. I objected. I think y'all know my stance on freedom of speech, and I think that you know my attitude on being respectful. But I'll ask the rest of the committee to come in here during the next meeting and let you know. But nobody has ever asked to move the people's voice to the end of the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. I'm not gonna, like I said, not going to specify people or name call. That is what we need to do, so we will move on from that. We'll leave the public hearing open if anyone else would like to speak. Sure, Mr. Belcher, I will. So from my comments on the moving of the visitor section, an explanation of moving the visitor section, we have modified our rules in order to better match state statutes and regulations from other communities. We decided to move the visitor section to the end of the meeting for the following reasons. As Mr. Sanders brought up, this allows people to speak to items presented during the meeting that do not have a public hearing. It allows people to hear council's discussions during the meeting and comment on those. This is a more standard practice that goes in line with what other communities in the region do. I think Mr. Woodman commented on that at the time. Though they would require you to sign up before the meeting, and we are not currently requiring that. If you wish to speak during the visitor section, we ask that you sign up and put your card in the basket. Based on the number of people signed up, we will limit either the amount of time for each speaker or the total number of speakers. That is from my comments on October 26th, 2020. We will leave open the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Nope. Motion to approve, if we're going back to whatever the thing we originally were talking about, Cindy's grant request
So made.
for the lead.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Where are we at now?
And we'll move on to
Russell-
the next one.
Resolution number 2021-105, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to apply for and accept an Ozarks Inclusive Opportunity Grant provided by the Community Foundation of the Ozarks to support the city's Listen, Encourage, Advocate, Demonstrate initiative. Mayor and council, this one, like I said, is for the Community Foundation of the Ozarks. They have a specific grant open right now called Ozarks Inclusive Opportunity Grant. I'm requesting $2,000 from them. What I'd like to do is fund 2022's lead events. This would be more listening sessions. I'm hoping to have possibly a multicultural event later on in the year in conjunction with Matt's Movies at the park. I've talked to Mr. Lyles about possibly purchasing T-shirts and having like a lead Nixa ambassador and get those out to maybe volunteers that might help with this, help spread the word, promote the initiative itself, and maybe even do the little black bracelets and stuff. But right now, with the budget as it is, I'm looking for funding for 2022. Any questions on this?
Any questions? Thank you, Cindy. We will open up the public hearing. We will close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Resolution number 2021-106, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to apply for and accept grant funding provided by the Nixa Community Foundation to acquire canoes for use by the city's Stream Team program.
Mayor and council, this is the end of several community, Nixa Community Foundation grant requests. This one is for, as you all know, we have a stream team. We do twice annually, we do cleanups along Finley, James River in conjunction with our stormwater permitting, which is approved by the Department of Natural Resources. The stream team's been around over 20 years, long before I got here. The original canoes that are a little over 20 years old, I believe they were even from a grant through Bass Pro or something at one time. This was well before my time here, so I'm kind of reaching on that. To make a long story short, we've used these a lot. We're starting to put patches on top of patches. We don't have a large stormwater budget because we don't have a direct funding for it. So we would want to, we're asking to apply for monies to possibly replace some of these canoes. We're asking obviously for 8, which is very ambitious, and we realize that. But the intent of that is to show the need that we have, and what we'll do is, if they would grant us any of these, if we are approved for any of these monies, we would certainly apply for, or replace some canoes and then maybe come back in future years and maybe start a rotation of completing these. So
What's the cost of the individual canoes?
the canoes they're a little over $1,000.
They do like the last 20 years, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's a decent canoe, but it's not an expensive canoe. So
The tape, right?
Yeah.
Okay, nice, yeah.
Some Flex Seal.
Flex seal tape, right?
Will be
Okay.
good.
yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you, Doug. We will open up the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Motion to approve?
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Everybody likes canoes. Anything else from staff? Don't stomp on Aaron's thing, so. Nope. Anything? Anybody? Anything else from council?
I did.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. I just going to throw out a reminder that Friday at 10 o'clock at JTSD, we'll have the unveiling of the new street sweeper, which we did in conjunction with last year's 5th grade class at JTSD, who did artwork to help us with, to be able to wrap that through a program from the company we bought the sweeper from. So if you're interested, JTSD at 10 o'clock, Friday.
Thank you, Doug. Anybody else? Anything from council?
We are going to have our second drug take-back day, the one for the fall, on Saturday, October 23rd, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at CVS Pharmacy. Officer Forgy and myself will be there collecting any unused or outdated, whatever, prescription and over-the-counter medications.
How often is that done a year?
Twice a year.
Twice.
Once
okay.
in the spring,
We were trying
once
to
in the
figure
fall.
this out like 3 weeks ago, and then all of a sudden it was announced, so.
Yep.
Do you take back just empty
Asking you, shall we?
containers?
No. Empty containers, no. And no,
People gave me a bunch of.
no needles for inhalers. The product is incinerated, so, yeah, inhalers don't do well. But, so,
Little explosion there, huh?
yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, on Thursday of this week, if I'm not mistaken, there's going to be a blood drive done right here. Correct?
Are we doing a blood?
Yes, by CBCO, right here in council chambers. I believe the hours are 10 to 3. Again, I'm not
Probably got
100% on
something
that. And if you happened to donate at the last one that was at the Bridge Church, that was the Ozark versus Nixa thing, Thursday is your next date that you're eligible to donate. So you can come to that one on Thursday and donate again. And it's really convenient for us because it's going to be right here in our city hall.
I think they're giving away Chiefs t-shirts this month as well.
Yeah, they
Giving
are.
away Chiefs, yeah, some sort of Kansas City Chiefs t-shirt.
Can you give those away now?
Yep, they're trying.
Hey now, watch it. Anything else? Mr. Peterson.
I would move that city council go into closed session under section 610-021-3 and 13 of RSMO, so that council may discuss hiring, firing, disciplining, or promoting of an employee, and personnel information about the employee is to be discussed. And individually identifiable personal records, performance ratings, or records pertaining to an employee are to be discussed. I also move that this closed session, records related thereto, and any votes taken by council during the session shall be closed under section 610-021 of RSMO, and that the city council shall stand adjourned at the close of session.
Very good.
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Jared Giddens,
Yes.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Darlene Graham,
Yes.
Amy Hookstrat,
Yes.
Justin Orff.
Yes.